Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today, Modeling for VFX Today with Modo. My name is Elise, and I'm Field Marketing Specialist here at Foundry, here to do a quick introduction and introduce Shane Griffith, the Digital Design Product Manager, the Digital Design Director of Product, and Roo MacNeill, who is a modeler at Framestore. Before we get started, I just wanted to give you a quick update on our Foundry virtual events. Right now, today marks our 20th virtual event, and we have 19 available on demand on our Foundry Livestorm page. If you'd like to check out our events, we suggest that you go to foundry.com/events. Also, if you'd like to participate, you can reach out to us at virtual.events@foundry.com. And looking forward to our upcoming schedule. This Thursday, we have a Foundry session, which is Nuke Learnings with Steve Wright. Then next Tuesday, we have a webinar for Look Dev in Lighting Automation, Preparing for Success, and that will be hosted by Abel Vargas. We're happy that you're staying up to date with us and connected on our virtual events, but we would suggest as well to check out our Insights Hub. On our Insights Hub, you'll find case studies, product releases, and articles on industry trends. Also, we suggest that you check us out on social media, and if you work with Modo and share any of your work on social media, we would love it if you tag it with the hashtag #MadeWithModo so we can check out your beautiful designs. Also on our Foundry website, we have our learn.foundry page, and there you can find some great content for Modo, including the Modo Essentials Guide, which was written by William Vaughn, and I believe he's here with us today, so hi William. Also, we have some tutorials on getting started with Modo, as well as release notes and documentation. Shane's going to give us a quick update on some news with Modo.
Oh, there's William joining on the chat. Yep. You got to echo from yours. There you go. Thank you, Elise. So also on the community, we've just recently released a beta of Modo 14.1. So it's an upcoming release. And so that went out Thursday last week, and we have an update coming, I believe Thursday this week as well for beta 1. So please, if you're an active maintenance or subscription customer, go check that out. Elise is going to post the chat or the link to that in the chat for everybody. And yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to Roo for joining us today, and really looking forward to his presentation and learning more about his workflow in VFX.
Thank you very much. And for the comment about the 3D glasses, you'll find out soon.
Yeah, they're not 3D glasses.
That would be cool though. Here we go. Thank you guys. Also just want to take the opportunity to shout out our industry partners, including Access VFX. If you are looking for a mentor or would like to be a mentor for upcoming artists in the VFX community, it's a great place to go check out. Also, the Academy Software Foundation, ACM SIGGRAPH, and VES, the Visual Effects Society. They're all great organizations, and we encourage you if you have the extra time to get involved. Finally, I'd just like to say thank you to all who have participated in our virtual events program so far to help make it a success. In particular, today, we'd like to thank Framestore for donating Roo's talent and time, and to Roo for creating a presentation. I'd also just like to let everybody know that Roo's portion of the presentation is pre-recorded for quality purposes, and that the entirety of this presentation is being recorded, and you will receive a link directly to your inbox. So with that being said, thank you for joining us today. We hope that you enjoy the webinar.
Hello there, my name's Rory, but if you ever need to speak to me, just go with Roo. If you want to know why, just look at the spelling. It's always best to cover this at the start, because people think I'm trying too hard to be cool with the glasses. They're color correction glasses. As it turns out, having red in your life is a pretty cool addition. I currently work at Framestore in the modelling film department, currently with the interesting twist of working from home, which of course means that I never work in my pyjamas, and I definitely am having a shower every morning. At the side there, you'll see the logos of a few of the films I've worked on. I have plenty more on my IMDb if you're interested, but a key point I always like to bring up is every single one of these films I've worked on using Modo. So everybody who I've heard arguing that it doesn't get used in the big VFX houses, complete nonsense. And today in this talk here, we'll be covering VFX today and how it's used, and hopefully I'll open up a few areas to you that maybe you didn't think were something you could access using VFX. So first up, let's just look at a few milestones, without which you wouldn't be listening to me today, watching the films you do, or enjoying most of the products that you own. So first up, we have Jason and the Argonauts. This is an absolute classic. If you've not seen it, add it to your watch list. To put it into perspective, this scene with the skeleton warriors here, it took over 4 months to hand animate the 3-minute sequence, which is just insane thinking about how quickly and how much we put out nowadays. Ray Harryhausen was inspired by the earlier kind of King Kong movies. This is what helped him choose this approach. Next up here we have Tron, the movie from 1982. It was nominated for the Best Visual Effects in the 1983 Academy Awards. However, it got snubbed as the industry considered computer effects a shortcut and not true filmmaking. And one that I still can't get my head around, and a very good example of how far things have come since then. When they were making the film, it used just 2 megabytes of memory and a 330 megabyte hard drive to store all their renders and everything on. I don't think there's even an operating system today that you would be able to turn a PC on with, let alone do any film work. Next up, of course, would be Jurassic Park. Phil Tippett said, do you mean we're extinct, after he saw the first CG tests, because there was a battle between the traditional hand animated stop motion and this kind of new influx that was starting to come in of CG technology. And so rather than getting rid of these already skilled artists, they made this really cool system when they created these puppets that would be very much like the hand animated models, but had little sensors on them that were connected to a computer, and these controlled the joints of a rig. So when they moved these puppets in real life, they could use it to keyframe animate the CG character, so you still had all that traditional hand felt skill, but with the modern technology. And next up, of course, would be Lord of the Rings. I would class this as the spark that lit the fire to the modern way that cinema is created. The technology that Weta created to make this possible kind of kicked the door open. It was on seeing the advances in VFX that created Gollum that James Cameron took Avatar off the shelf and proceeded to steal all my pocket money by making me go to the cinema so many times to see this film. Now, the way that films are made today has completely changed, and this has had to change in response to the advances in technology. We're up to the point now where game engines are being used to previs entire films. I've even seen some cases where they've been used to render out things that are cinema ready. If you look at like the RTX demos, they're mind-blowing what can be done now. So more of a practical look at how we use these techniques currently would be for previs, as you can see here. The system was created for gravity, in which the entire scene was prevised to work with the camera rigs that were going to be in place. So all the calculations, the speed, the angles, everything could be worked out before a single real life thing was touched. Now this is then taken into the shoot, where there's this specialised box made that was used to simulate the lighting and the rotation of Earth. And because all the camera movements were already prevised, those values were just completely plugged straight into it. So you had day one, first take, everything was exactly as it was planned out. There's no standing around waiting. Actors can be very, very expensive, as well as having all the crew on hand and all the equipment. So you want to get this out of the way as quickly as you can. I mean, try to imagine how much it must cost to hire George Clooney for a day, so the sooner you can do it, the better. And in the final scene here, as you can see, you ignore 90% of all the work and you replace everything pretty much apart from the actor's face with an entire CG world, character, props, the works. But yeah, at least you've got some good lighting reference, I guess. Like any new accessible technology, CG has been kind of oversaturated into the market, so it has picked up a bit of a reputation of not being the best thing ever. But the problem I find is that people only notice bad VFX and not the stuff that blends in seamlessly. It's a slightly cruel part of our job, but if everything we do is done correctly, you should never be able to see our work. This is where I believe the dislike of CG comes in. It's not all lens flares and smashing robots as much fun as they are to work on. A lot of it is very subtle and hidden. So a couple of examples of this would be something like Birdemic here. I'm pretty sure this one explains itself. Sometimes a good idea should stay as only an idea. Although, I mean, who doesn't love a good B movie? But it has also managed this kind of sneaky workaround of it's so bad that it's become a cult film. I don't know if that's the best way to get around your CG problems, but hey, it can work out, I guess. And next up would be something like The Mummy. This one's kind of legendary bad in the CG world. They had the technology then to make this great, but it was simply forced and rushed out because it was in that wave of cinema when everything had to be CG because it was the buzzword of the day. It's a kind of a failure of directors in the production for not allowing enough time to plan and do this properly. It was just rushed in. Really just a little bit of subsurface scattering would have saved this, and it falls into that horrible category of CG coming before the story. The CG should support your story, not the other way around. A third approach here is kind of what I like to call like the sexy approach. One advantage of this entire film was pushing the tech to the limit at the time, so it all kind of blended together. It didn't stand out quite as jarring as when the rock appeared. But in this occasion, they've gone with the kind of the attract the nerd technique of just putting something sexy in that will distract you. And it's a pretty good film, but unfortunately it's still in that uncanny valley stage, so it doesn't allow you to remove yourself from the CG that you're watching, and it doesn't allow you to just enjoy the story. It just is kind of jarring. And I would say it's kind of a masterpiece of showing what can be done. Would be Blade Runner 2049, when they've recreated Rachel. The amount of work that must have gone into the digi-double is truly groundbreaking. NPC have a full breakdown of it if you want to see, but just looking at it, it's just, you can see it's seamless. Like a lot of people I know didn't even realize this was a digital character. And I think a good way to reinforce this kind of argument is I've got this clip that's from the production of The Matrix Reloaded, which was around about the same time as The Scorpion King. But just look at how different and how much better things can be when you approach them properly with thought and planning.
The part of the process that involves getting the expression performance is perhaps the most complex, in which the actor needs to, in a somewhat restrained situation, provide an emotional sort of facial expression which is captured and processed and assigned on an individual basis. For some time we were speculating whether we wanted to try any scenes with articulate speech in close-up shots with CG humans, and there were discussions that I was having with Larry and Andy about possibly taking the shot where Smith says more and making that fully virtual. But, you know, as applied strictly for action beats, it was not necessary to apply articulate speech. However, the technology is there.
I was fortunate enough to have the pleasure of working on Disney's Christopher Robin. I think before Lady and the Tramp came out, this would be what I would have considered one of the most up-to-date benchmarks on how to do VFX for storytelling. This is such a classic IP with characters that everybody knows, so a real big challenge was not to make people see this as trying to steal that original story, but trying to add to it, and I think it was done perfectly for this. Most of what we did was what we call hidden VFX, things that you'll never see, but just add the right emotions and atmosphere to a shot to make you truly feel what you should be feeling. So I've got this nice little clip here that explains it better than I could, so if you watch that, and then I'll come back to you afterwards.
Disney's Christopher Robin is an emotionally driven drama with visual effects providing the hero characters. The story centres on the Robin family's realisation that toy animals are truly alive.
You're the bearer of my father's drawings.
Winnie the Pooh. Pooh for short.
Realism of the computer animated characters was central to the premise of the film. If the audience could believe in them, they would also have permission to believe that they could enlighten Christopher Robin and his family. The resulting visual effects have an exquisite amount of detail, with animated performances displaying a level of subtlety and an organic quality rarely seen.
We need you.
You need me? Well, if you need me.
On set, we used physical stuffies for each character. These stuffies were puppeteered by cast readers, who would provide blocking reference for cast and crew and be on hand to read back lines. Once blocking was established, our hero takes were often done clean. Human-toy interactions were handled by grey proxies, with many tracking markers and missing limbs.
There goes the tail.
Animation was based around the limitations of how the real toys moved, discovering what we could do to depict a range of poses, moods, and expressions throughout the body and face as we went along. Ultimately, we came up with a range of motion that, whilst often extremely subtle, could be animated with enough contrast to allow performance. For the fur, we used the practical stuffies as reference. We matched UV panel layouts to the cloth patterns and literally matched their costumes stitch for stitch, creating wool threads and fuzz and rendering them with a specially developed volumetric shader. We think Winnie the Pooh might have been wearing the world's most technically advanced woolen jumper. To further add to the realism, simulated interactions were added to each character's fur and texture to ground them in their environment. In Disney's Christopher Robin, this ranged from leaves, mulch, mud, moss, rain, and even a fast-flowing river. Not to mention honey. Lots and lots of honey.
Are you sure you wouldn't like some Christopher Robin?
Being toys, the characters were also carried around and hugged. These were some of the hardest shots, needing simulated interactions as well as complex paint restorations to make the contact believable. Two of the key sets in the film lent themselves to a 100% CG approach. Winnie the Pooh's house was laid out using set decorations on a disused stage. The props were photo-scanned and incorporated into a very high-resolution CG build. Camera and lighting were designed in a hands-on session with the DP to make sure we kept with his distinctive style. The hollow log was approached in a similar way. Due to new shots being added to the farewell party scene, we also had to create fully CG shots that again fitted seamlessly next to the live action plates, with characters and props all being recreated digitally. The visual effects were extensive. With 1,374 shots delivered, we adopted a workflow designed to have the minimal possible impact on the production and allow the traditional crafts of cinematography, production, and costume design to shine through. This attention to detail has been put into every frame to make sure the photorealistic toys fit perfectly into the live-action world of Disney's Christopher Robin.
Now, with all the advances of modern hardware and software, we're able to create things at scales that are just unimaginable to 5-10 years ago. Limitations are really quickly falling away. Something like this would have had to be so well planned out. It would be an incredibly smart shot placement where only effort would have been put into this little wedge, because to create something this massive for an any angle view would have been render farm disabling essentially. But again, this is another step in the process of removing limitations from the storytelling process. Because you can see here, something like this would have previously been a matte painting, just a static image. But now it's a fully 3D scene from a prop kit. Each one of these buildings has been modelled, UV, textured, lit and laid out. So the advantage of this as well, if it comes time to change a shot or to edit an animation, or, any kind of tweak that might need to be made, we just go in, we update that one building, it will automatically propagate to the entire city, we re-render and it's done. You can move on to your next task in your list. So this is a huge time saver, it's a huge sanity saver, and also it just means that we can spend more time on unique individual assets for a film, and we can really add detail in rather than wasting our time going in and spending days moving buildings around or adjusting matte paintings. It helps us increase quality so much. So when we put all of these techniques together, we can now create massive atmospheric shots with a level of complexity that just wasn't possible before. And you see these beautiful dynamic camera movements and lighting. And there's a scene further on in the movie where you can watch a time lapse of this entire city from above. It's transitioning from day to night. I think it's a real showcase of what can be done with this approach. One really cool thing about being a VFX artist as well is it's a really cool way to get yourself into a movie. I mean, when you work on one of these films, you can get your name put in the credit. And I know it doesn't seem like much of a thing, but it's such a super cool feeling the first time you see your name up on the big screen. It kind of makes all those antisocial hours of closed curtains and sitting with your intravenous coffee drip worth it. But it'll also provide you with opportunities that other people just simply do not have access to. It'll give you major bragging rights. An example of this here would be like this medieval character. That's the director's son. That's a pretty cool thing to have. And all these people in the background here, these were all shot in the Framestore basement on a green screen. So basically an email was put out asking if you wanted to be an extra. We were put in jumpsuits, given props and directed to walk around. And this was just to add background noise to the scene, because that's that little extra bit of complexity that pulls you away from the CG in the foreground. It makes you feel like you're in an environment, not just a synthetic scene. Which you can see, it's obviously very successful, and plus it's really cool if when you're watching a film you can nudge your friend in the shoulder and say like, hey, do you recognise that person? And again, it's all about those bragging rights when it comes to being a VFX artist, because everything we do is visual, and I guarantee if you were to try and explain technically how our job works to somebody, they would fall asleep. So you've got to hit them with the cool stuff, and then when they're already trapped, that's when you get them with the technical side, and it's too late for them to escape. Now, I think this is going to be one of the coolest shots in the scene. It's so dynamic and interesting. And as well, there's kind of the joke around about it is that this is going to be one of the coolest Tinder profile pictures possible. This is our previous shot of it. And we had the amazing opportunity of having our head scanned because they needed people to fill in for these characters because they just didn't have the time or the budget to bring in actors. So this is the photo at the time of our modelling team that was in the building. An unbelievably cool bunch of people. We've got Jason in the front there. He was one of the characters. We have as well Matt, who was our head of department. This is Federico. He was one of the characters. I tried to find another photo of him, but most of the photos I've got probably shouldn't be on the internet. So we'll just stick with that one for now. We had one of our staff members from production as well. That was the character Crimson Wind that I had the pleasure of working on. If you notice with each of these characters as well, each one has a theme. So the Crimson Wind, the red one there, that was like a kind of an airplane theme. He's got a lot of wings. One was meant to be more Formula One, one was meant to be motorbike based. So now we're going to head more into the world of product design, such as footwear here. As you may have noticed, Modo's getting pretty good at shoes these days. So one of the main advantages of this is, why would you waste your time prototyping, wasting materials, wasting couriers, reviews, returning items to vendors? We can just make a 3D mock-up. You can share it in real time using a program such as Colorway, which plugs straight into the Modo renderer. You can test all different color schemes, materials. The advantage of that as well is you can limit them. So if you have a client who doesn't really know what they want, rather than giving them this mad free reign, which can really make things difficult, you can send them, say, 20 variations. This is the material that we have available. They can select the colors, and it gives them that impression that they are in charge of the creative process, when it's really just finding a way to guide them into something sensible. But it's much easier than you maybe seen like one of these videos of like, or a meme of the person in charge sitting behind them. Move it a bit to the left, move it a bit to the right, move it a bit to the left. It can become infuriating, that process of going back and forward. So if you can take a step out and just make it easier, such as this, give them Colorway, they'll send you it back with the updates, you hit render, it's done. So much time saving. All I did for this one was I took an old model that I had of a Converse high top, and I just wanted to see if I could update it and how easy it would be to do that. It was a kind of an experiment of new techniques. So it's really easy. I grabbed the Modo logo from a Google search, used the color dropper tool just to kind of get the background and the base fabric material color. As you can see up in the disc there, I don't know what you'd call that, like the leather tag. It was just copy paste the logo from the Google search into Photoshop on top of the map I already had. And it was as simple as just saving that and literally dragging and dropping that JPEG into the shader tree, and it was done. Now there is also this thing that can happen, it's a wee bit annoying but great, is when you double your render resolution and it completes faster than the last time you worked on the project with the same hardware. It's kind of bittersweet because it's amazing. You think, yes, this is so cool, it's rendered so quickly, but then you also remember the last time when you had to sit till 4 a.m. watching the buckets go. Working with the new empath renderer with the NVIDIA denoiser, if you've not tried it, it is mind-blowing. And what I suggest doing is what I started doing with this is lower it at render it at the lowest resolution you can with a denoiser, just to see what it can do. It's pretty mind-blowing. And so when afterwards, because this was such a simple process to do, I took the idea out to test it with more traditional art methods. So I'm not very good at hand drawing these days. Without a mouse and keyboard, I'm pretty useless. So I got in touch with one of my friends. I ended up going in quite a different direction than I was expecting, and in fact proved to me how much more powerful this method can be than I thought it was. I have a good friend of mine that creates these really, really cool illustrations. I have like a funky style, which now as well, because of the color saturation she uses, are completely blown my mind. I can't begin to explain how interesting it is to find purple for the first time. So I asked her to help me do an updated design for these high tops, because I know that she does all her art by hand-drawn traditional methods, which is kind of the polar opposite of what I do. I just wanted to see, testing that previous method, how easy it would be to combine the two styles together. And of course, pretty much as soon as we started, everything went to pot, as it always does. I got pictures like these through from her of her sitting in a hospital bed all wired up to drips and everything. So I was pretty convinced from the word go that the idea was dead, and it wouldn't go anywhere. But this is where I kind of learnt to stop using these preconceived restrictions that you have in your mind. If everything's not perfect and you don't have the best processor and all the things that you need, that you're not going to be able to make the project, and it's nonsense. If you just go with it, you'll find that you can make things even more interesting than you originally planned, and really cool stuff, really cool projects can come out of it. So to get this project working, what I did was I just sent her exports of my UV maps, and literally just sitting in her hospital bed using her sketchbook and her phone, we started doing these doodles together. Now we never had a phone call, we never had a meeting, we never met each other. This was all done over Facebook Messenger. It was literally just, I'd send her the UV map, she'd do a sketch, I'd give her a quick render like the ones below to show how it would work. We'd edit it around a wee bit until we found a happy medium. And this kind of blew my mind, because I thought this would be something I'd need to sit in a room with or go to a dailies meeting so you could point out exactly where things needed to be. But it was really, really easy. What I would advise if you're going to do it is make like a landmark. So you can see in the bottom right there, and we have that circular disc. So that was our base anchor point. So we could center the UV maps of the wireframe. I don't know why I put the wireframe in, it was pretty pointless, but that's just the way it went. And then you have the circular disc. Now that's the section that's never going to change, and anything behind that will be occluded. So the brief then came, make whatever design you want based around that circle. So we ended up going with like a space cat theme and turning that into a moon. So where this project ended up being so much more interesting from my point of view was simply that because I had all the bump spec there, the normal maps, everything was already there from the previous model. All I had to do was, when she sent me that original, the finished drawing, which I believe she did with ink, I just went into Photoshop, I got rid of any little paper specs that were there at all. It was maybe a 5-minute job, save it, and then just drag and drop it right into the shader tree and the diffuse map, and done. That was it. Everything was there and ready to go. All I had to do was then render it out. And for me, I still find it crazy that it was easy to create something completely new that was brought together from two completely different art forms. I'm sitting in my bedroom, she's sitting in her hospital bed, and we managed to come up with this. And it was, apart from the kind of the to and fro conversations, it maybe took about 2 days in total to get all of this done. So for me, I was thinking, if this is what I can do sitting here while she's sitting in a less than ideal situation, imagine what you can do with these simple techniques if you're in a proper studio or have all the resources you need by hand. And it's really starting to point out to me and reinforce this idea that not having the right hardware is no longer an excuse to stop you creating. I've heard too many people say that they can't do it because they don't have a fast enough PC or whatever. Doesn't matter. Do something else. Find a technique. There's always a workaround. Just go for it, and you will be amazed what will happen when you just stop doubting yourself and just let creativity happen. This would be another example of something that I always wondered, how on earth do you approach it? Because from everything I've seen, it's one of those mythic kind of categories, only the world's best artists can do it, which, as I discovered, is totally not true at all. So for this one, I took just from the asset browser in Modo the basic male sculpt mesh, and I then, using nothing but, I think I used spheres, cylinders, and a couple of cubes, nothing else. There was no custom geometry, it was just super simple base meshes. And using the Dynamesh system, I cut it apart and I made this really, I think it's pretty cool, kind of riggable character. Because I have this Instagram channel where I take this posable plastic character around. I use them as an icebreaker because it's much easier to speak to a small plastic character than it is to a human. And being that we are a wee bit introverted in this industry, it's kind of a workaround. So I figured, hey, let's make a digital version of them. And I think this was maybe a day and a half's worth of work. It did end up becoming a much bigger project because, as a kind of an OCD modeler, everything needs to be quads as far as I'm concerned. So I then went in and hand retopologized this. It's all quads and sub D ready. I wanted it to be a production level. And the idea of it was, with this character that I have, if there's ever a situation when I've forgotten them or something's gone wrong, is broken, if I want to take a really cool photo at an environment or an event or something like that, I've got my model here, so I can take that photo and later on I can comp this model in, and it's going to be exactly like it was there. This originally started as a project where I wanted to scan it, but it ended up being a longer process, and it was quicker just to go in and quickly fire in all these pins and joints and everything. Because what's really nice about the way that I Dynameshed it is the cutters, I then just pull them out into a separate mesh, and now I have all my pins, I have all my joints, I have all my hinges. These fit exactly because these were what were used to make the holes. And I know that if I need to make any edits to the mesh, all I have to do is go in and change that original cutter. I can change the size of a joint or anything like that, re-export it, and it's done. And the nice thing with it being in Dynamesh, I can set it to be airtight, so I know that this model is pretty much good to go for printing. There may be some small errors that might need to be touched up here and there, but this is about 98% of the way there. Obviously, with the retopologized version, I can't just go back and forward, but that's just for my own gratification. This is such a cool way to quickly prototype things, and this is what I would like to as well, why I'm showing these to try and get across, is that this is a tool that was there that I never really understood what it was for, because I was thinking in these traditional methods of VFX, just taking something simple, looking at a plastic character on my desk, this is the kind of stuff you can do. So just rather than always making a car or a gun or something, just try something different. Literally look around your desk, pick something up and think, how could I make this easily? That's a big thing as well. A lot of students I find, they always try to go for these really, really complicated methods, which is really good for learning, but it's not how we work. You want to be as quick and efficient and as easy as you possibly can. So just, whatever software it is you're using, dive into it and have a look beyond just the cool YouTube tutorial things that you find. Now, there are about 1 million different things I'd love to cover in this, but of course time is always a constraint. So what I'd like to kind of conclude on here is the main thing I want to get across to you today is there's really nothing to stop you from being able to achieve anything you want from your room. I have no formal degrees, no qualifications for VFX, but due to just the things above, just trying stuff, giving it a shot, not being limited by your hardware, I've managed to get to this place where I am today. So if you have an idea, make it reality, and don't trap yourself in these excuses, because I've certainly found myself trapped in them before. The graphics card's not fast enough for it, so just work around it. It's not an excuse. But I think the most important one that I love to get across for modeling in particular is find a tool that works for you. There's so many people I know that are so stuck in this mindset of you need to have this one particular bit of software that's the only way to succeed. It's nonsense. It needs to be one that works for you. It's the kind of thing that I always bring up is a tool should suit the job. If the tool doesn't suit the job, you don't change, you change the tool. That's just how things work. So for me, I use Modo because, as I was saying above it, for VFX production, what you want to do is remove restrictions. And for me, working in Modo, it removes all those technical restrictions. A lot of it is, I don't know how they've kind of figured out ahead of time what people want to do or how they've guessed how things should be used. But it's just the way it works is it removes all the technical from it and just allows me to get on and be creative and kind of spill everything in my head out in a way where I can do it quickly and efficiently, and it doesn't kill the joy, which unfortunately for you guys means that my stuff's going to be posted all over your unsuspecting social timelines, but now's your turn to get revenge, so get some projects out and spam them all over my social pages and show me what you can make.
That was really, really good. It's awesome.
So weird listening to your voice.
Come back. It is. I bet. I did a bit a while ago. I hate rewatching my own recordings as well. It's very rarely that I do. I'd rather do things live. So hard to do. Appreciate the time you spent putting that together for us. It's so fascinating to me that first of all, I love the can-do, no excuses attitude, and that is it. For those that don't know Roo, every time I've met Roo, he's always been that way. Like he never comes to me, hey, what are you going to do about this problem or that problem? He's always just so proactive about actually embracing the problem to find a new solution. It's really encouraging to see that attitude, how it's propelled you into your career. Have you, I think one of the questions that popped up either in the chat or the timeline here, have you found that that's helped you be more versatile and more fitting for VFX? Just the ability to do anything?
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. It's for what I'm doing now, not so much, but for training up, it certainly did. And I think especially for the way that I learned, because just teaching myself, there's like a really easy trap. You know, you only learn the things that you're interested in. So all the boring stuff that you don't care about, you'll never ever go in and learn about it unless a lecturer is forcing you to listen to it. So with this kind of approach of purposely picking things that are difficult and I don't know how to do, it forces me to go look at those tools. But it's kind of just, it's really helped out in actually figuring out how to work properly rather than just sticking to, as I said before, always doing cars and guns because they're super cool and pretty easy.
So you do a variety of things at Framestore. You don't necessarily do just props or environments. You do characters and a whole bunch, everything in between, essentially.
Mostly it's environments and props that I do. I've been getting into a bit of character work. But because of the speed and level we do it at, you need to work up slowly to be kind of put onto a main character. Because we've got very specific ways of working and quite a small team. But it's mostly like Alita was my main character work because it was like hybrid between hard and soft surface. And I kind of prefer it with my way of working as well with environments and props because rather than spending 6 months on one thing, I can spend 6 months on building an entire city. That's much more interesting to me than one small thing.
Yep. So there's another good question from Toby here that I didn't quite catch in the presentation, but were you formally taught at any one point in time, or did you always just how did you get started and kind of get your job at Framestore too? I think there was another good question asking about how you got started and how you got the job at Framestore.
I think that's ones that I wish that people didn't ask because it's not a very good answer to that one, unfortunately. But like, literally starting for 3D Wise was just when I think I was like 8 or 9. I somehow got a hold of one of those old CDs that came in a magazine that was like 40 tips for most amazing Photoshop, blah blah blah. I think it was Lightwave, a super old one, and that just kind of gave me the bug for it, and I just played around with it in the background forever. I did go to uni to study it, but I lasted just over a month because I was a bit too much into partying and not so much into studying. So that wasn't really the wisest choice. So it's taken me a good few years more than it should have to get to the job. And for getting it, it was essentially just sit at home, put as much portfolio work out as I could. And I think I just opened up like a Google search, just searched like VFX companies and just went through them one by one and applied until somebody gave up and gave me a job. And so there was nothing overly special to it. It was just pure determination, and I'm going to keep emailing you if you don't give me a job.
I think that again, the can-do attitude, the persistence in those things. I see that a lot as well. I mean, times are different. Like when you got started and I got into the field, it's very, very different than today, and the amount of skill that's required today is much different than then to get started. So to a certain extent, I agree with you. We were due to the times, we were lucky to fall into these positions at those times, but it still falls back to that attitude, the can-do attitude, and the persistence to keep marching along until you got what you were desiring and going after. I think that's true in anything in life. You just set your goal and you work hard to meet that goal all the way through, whether it be education or not.
It's a super important one as well and I was saying about try to do something other than just cars and guns and that. It's kind of like a joke, but it's also like a really easy trap to fall into, because if we get lots of portfolios and we're not necessarily going to look at the work just in its overall. We'll be looking if somebody has something specific to the film they're getting hired for. Like when I got hired for the film I was on, it was because of a specific model that I'd made kind of matched up with what they were looking for. And that's what got them interested, because I just had enough different things that it could show that, maybe I'm good for this or this or this or this. If you've only got one thing, you're shrinking your chances so much.
And I suppose, do you recommend a lot for those starting out to have that diversity shown in their demo reels, or what do you tell people? What's the best way, to present yourself for these jobs?
For starter ones, I would always normally say, can I do 3 completely different things and focus down? I think 3's probably very good. I mean, everybody's going to do a card or a gun at some point. Somehow it seems to be unavoidable. So fine, put one in, but at least pick a cool one. And then I would maybe do something in real world, which it's the most important thing for getting started, is to have it with reference. Because whenever we make something at work, we go into our dailies and we'll have to have 4 or 5 reference pictures of what we've modeled, why we've modeled, and where is it going to be. And then they'll sit with a laser pointer and match them up side by side. It's super easy to make like a cool looking chair, but then if that doesn't match what you're making, it's pointless. So like, I have like lots of referencing and wireframe. There's so many really cool pieces of art I've seen have been sent in for demo reels, and because there's no wireframe, there's just not even a consideration for looking at them, because that's, if you're going to be a modeler, that's how we know how you work, is you can hide things like a really nice matte cap or like a nice gray shader, hides reflections, and you can hide all your sims, but put your wireframe in if you want a chance. And I think it's quite nice as well, because if you know you're going to show your wireframe, it forces you to have to work properly and not use sneaky shortcuts because you can't hide them.
Williams clapping in agreement there, I could tell. The king of topology out there. There was a few other questions. Why Modo? And does Framestore have an issue with you using Modo? Obviously, you use it a lot. You've been using it a lot and used it on a number of films there over the years. So why Modo for you? And
I think it was when I first played around, it was with Lightwave, and so switching over to Modo was it's a pretty easy switch over. I think it was like 301 or 401, so it was a pretty easy transition and moving over. I think it's because I wasn't learning properly. I was just teaching myself in the bedroom, and there was good enough resources on the website. And so the old how to make a trainer in photo 1, and I was making a backpack, and it was like a cartoon kid. I was using them to figure out how to use it. And then I had a shot of like Max and Maya, and it did felt like being completely handicapped, because to do anything I needed to go through 50 pie menus to find this one tool, and it was just so user unfriendly. And like for the way I work, I'm not really into the technical side of it. I just like to make stuff. So like putting that barrier in between, if I'd sit down at like 8 at night, I would just be like, okay, I'm watching YouTube tonight, because you wouldn't be motivated, because it'd be so mumuch effort just trying to figure out how to do one simple thing. And working in Modo, I just sit down, and then suddenly it's 3 days later and I've not slept, just because there's nothing to stop me and look at the clock. It just, I get into it, and it's kind of like a blessing and a curse, because it's killed a few friendships and more than a couple of relationships.
Was there any particular film that you loved the most over the years that you worked on?
I would have said Alita normally, because that was some really cool stuff to work on. But we had an incredibly short turnaround on that, because we were just catching up on some stuff for Weta. So we had I think it was 6 months to do all the work for it, which was nowhere near enough time. But that worked really well for me, because I was using like an instance kit to build everything. And we do have this kind of instance system at work, but unless you have to use it, nobody really wants to use it, because it was written quite a while ago, so it's a bit janky. So just using like instance kits and Modo is just flashing through robots, and it was really quick for doing these really fast turnarounds. But I think probably my favorite overall would just be Thor Ragnarok, because it was just such a fun film to work on, and it's one of the few ones I've worked on where the director really is interested in CG and is fun about it, because he was one of the characters in the film. Taika Waititi, he was the rock character, so like he was part of the VFX thing. So it was fun. It was an interesting project, and to work for people who were actually interested in it, it's just so much energy.
Yeah, it makes a big difference, doesn't it? And everybody's into it. The level just shows through when it comes out. One last quick question here. Let me see, pluck one more out. This one caught my eye. And also tell us a little bit about the pipeline there that you use, because there are some particulars that I know that I think others might not. But do you have a lot of plugins? Do you have control over which plugins you can and can't use and things like that. Tell us a little bit about your setup with Modo at Framestore. I believe you're on Linux as well through most of the pipeline there too.
Yeah, that was quite nice recently, because one of the times I'd met you, I was asking, I need to upgrade to, I think it was a Modo 11, but our Linux was just so old it wasn't physically possible. But most of the films I worked on has been on 11 only, and then it's got up to 14 now. So that's all those cool things that I was sitting at work watching videos, these amazing new features. Like, yeah, they look cool, but I can't use them. But I have no plugins. I just use stock. There's nothing I've added in apart from Polystyrene, which I use for more prototyping stuff. Because we've got a kind of an asset library at work that I've pretty much just converted into my own usable things, just for quickly chucking in bolts and things like that. And so the only other real plugin I only use it at home though, is it's a Substance Live Link bridge, so I can jump between Substance and back. Because I hate having to go in and individually position maps and do all that kind of stuff. So just a magic button, job done. I like magic buttons.
Very cool. You do a lot of kit bashing type workflows, I presume, in general.
Yeah,
well, right?
When we're at work, I think that's a lot of people think like we're making everything from scratch, which would be kind of cool. But once you've made like a bolt 50 times, you really don't want to do it again. So it's mostly like we'll have pre-made ones that are published, so they've already UV'd and they're textured, so we can just bring them back in, and you're saving just time for everybody. It does kind of suck sometimes though, because you'll pull them in from films that are like 10 years ago to save time, and then it ends up taking longer because you've got to go and update everything from super old systems or old ways of doing it. But yeah, if we can get away with kit bashing, we'll do it as much as possible. And I think it's it's called a Rap 4 now. It used to be Rap 3. The Russian 3D.com, I think it is a program for wrapping a 3D model onto a scan. Been using that. That's been a complete game changer speed wise, because you can go from like a scan to topologized mesh 10 minutes or something.
That's really cool.
It's really annoying though if you ever made a character normally and then you see that tool.
Any other questions catch your eye that I didn't see here?
Let's have a look through here. I do a lot of plugins, and I pretty much just use Modo for everything. I just put it for work. I'd model everything in it and just put it in an FBX. The only other time I'd use something else is maybe some UV stuff in Maya, but that's just because of specific pipelines that we've got. So it's just to fit into the Framestore way of doing things. And for how many of your co-workers use Modo, there's one other person in the company I know of, but they're just using it for kind of experimental coding type stuff. It's nothing to do with creative. So I mean, that's kind of.
We see a few. I mean, there's at a lot of the VFX shops there in Soho and in London. It seems to be, at least from my perspective, there's a bit of freedom of use the tool that you're most comfortable with, and then we see a few artists here and there throughout all of them, between DNEG, Framestore, and others.
I think there's quite a few in
ILM as well, especially within the digital matte departments, and in particular areas where there's a high volume of turnover. We see that a lot. So where they have the most creative freedom and they have to produce a lot in short periods of time.
It's also like a really useful thing for me, because I think that's one that a lot of students don't realize when they're first getting started, is when you get a job, like you don't have like a normal job. It's not like you're here till you get fired. You get hired on a film, so it's normally like 3 months at a time. So for the last 3.5 years, I've been on rolling 3-month contracts. So you never know if you're going to have a wage or a job. It takes a while to get used to that one. But because I'm the only one modeling with Modo and I can just smash stuff out way quicker than Maya, that's kind of my saving grace. That's kind of kept me in the job, is you're essentially, you've got to prove your usefulness. So they've got plenty of cool Maya modelers, and then if there's somebody that can, like, okay, we need somebody who can really quickly kit bash some hard surface stuff, and it's like, hello, I can instance that for you, and then suddenly you're useful, and they don't think about getting rid of you. Theoretically, it's kind of working.
So one last question, and then you had the contest that we wanted to post about here as well. But the last question is, what's your number one piece of advice for someone getting started in the 3D industry? You train and coach a lot of people out there. What's the number one thing that you tell those getting started?
Ask somebody who's not your mum to look at your work.
That always helps.
Yeah, because like if you ask your friend or your family member, they're pretty much always going to tell you like, "Well, yeah, that's amazing." Like I'd say go on like Reddit or one of these sites. The internet doesn't care about you as a person. Like go somewhere where people will deliberately rip you apart because you need that, and they'll show you everything that's wrong. Because if I go back and look at my old portfolio sometimes, and there's stuff in there that I really hate that sometimes the things that are on the internet are there forever. There's a lot of stuff that I wish wasn't there anymore, but it's because my mum said it looked cool, and I'm like, oh, okay, I believe you. But, yeah, as somebody you don't know.
Well, I think you hinted at it there. I mean, even you often look back at time, and there's stuff that you don't like that you did, and I think everybody needs to have a bit of thick skin with that critique. Everybody has an opinion out there, but be able to take those key aspects from that opinion and improve with that. That's a really good segue though too. You offer those critiques to young and just anybody in general. They can send you videos of their stuff and you'll help critique it, right?
Yeah, I normally just they get in touch with me, and normally LinkedIn I use. They give me their portfolio, and I normally give them about half an hour each at a time of going through and just showing them what to fix, or if there's persistent problems, I'll do kind of a live demo how to actually model it or do it. Because as the one I've noticed that a lot of like unis and talks and stuff I go to, it's always the same questions and problems are coming up over and over and over again. So it's kind of essentially just another way of me finding a way to deal with a problem. It's like I got fed up with being asked the same question, so it's like, here's a video, everybody watch this, done. I mean, it's kind of totally efficient, but it works.
That's awesome. So how do people tune in for that? Where's the link? Where do they send you?
For that, it's just if you go into YouTube and search for Rooviews. It's me trying to be really cool with the name. There's a Rooviews and Roo. It was one of those ideas at like 2 a.m. that unfortunately now the channel's named and I can't go back on. And the best bet is just to get me on LinkedIn, because maybe another quick tip as well, if you're up and coming, don't message people you want to help on their personal socials, because we won't respond, or you might kind of bug us. I mean, it's not like bug us, but if we've got a lot of people messaging you all the time and you want kind of peace, it's not cool. Like, get us on LinkedIn, easiest way. And as well, I've got the wee competition here. That model I showed of the plastic figure, the model of it. I've got a link for it here. You can grab it from a Dropbox, because normally at an event, I'll say to whoever can take the coolest photo with it, tag me in the channel I've got on Instagram. I'll give you an hour dedicated to whatever you want. Normally I say just as long as it's legal, I don't really care what it is. Preferably something to do with VFX, but I mean, whatever it is, if you just want to chat about VFX in general, however it should go. So just going to copy paste that in there. Okay. So I've got I've got my Instagram name there, and if you just tag it with that VFX guy Roo, I'll get it. So there's just a model in there. Just put it somewhere cool, render it in the most interesting place you can, and whoever wins, you can have an hour legally for whatever you want.
There you go. That's fantastic offer. An hour is a lot of critique. Hopefully you can handle it as well. Because as you saw, Roo's very honest with his opinions, and I love that about him. So thank you again. It's always so inspiring to see your work. There's tons of stuff on his Instagram and his portfolio sites all across the internet out there. Lots of great stuff posted with Roo. I wanted to also put in a little quick plug for something I've been doing with a number of people. Every Friday we get together at beer o'clock, brew o'clock. Sometimes it's we have people joining from Australia and Korea, all over the world. So sometimes it's early morning for some, late in the day for me. But we get together and we do a weekly hangout and stream that live to YouTube as well. And Roo will get you on there in a couple weeks' time to join in on that fun as well. We're taking this Friday off, so we'll be back on the regular schedule next Friday, June 26th. But Elise, under Emma's name here, posted the link to that in the chat. So definitely check that out. There's about a half a dozen or so past recordings there, talking all different types of things, even some forward conversations of things that we're looking at from the development team, and gets you a little bit of an inside scoop on some things that's going on here. So thank you again, Roo, and thank you everybody for tuning in today. And there will be a recording of this session distributed via email and available through the Foundry live events, where there's 19 other recordings available to download and check out as well. So thank you, everybody, and speak to you again soon.
Bye-bye.
It's awesome.